Welcome, aspirants. Get ready because today we are diving into a truly advanced academic explainer crafted specifically for your UGC NET and JRF preparation. We're going to rigorously deconstruct Buddhist philosophy, tracing the whole fascinating journey from its deeply ethical, pragmatic roots right up to its incredibly complex epistemological schisms. Look, if you want to achieve real conceptual mastery and lock in that high score, you've got to understand not just the what of these concepts, but the deep why and how behind them. So let's jump right in.
Here's our exact roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the foundation, which is the anti-speculative attitude. Then, the mechanics of suffering through the 12 links. Next, we'll unpack the deep philosophical implications, followed by the 4 philosophical schools. And finally, we'll cover the religious divide and wrap up with an interactive quiz.
All right, moving to Section 1, the foundation and Buddha's anti-speculative attitude.
To really get Buddhism, we first have to understand why Buddha famously completely ignored the 10 metaphysical questions. These are known in Pali as avyakatani. Questions like, is the world eternal? Or does the soul survive death? Well, consider the sheer pragmatism of his famous poisoned arrow analogy. Imagine a man who's just been shot with a poisoned arrow. If that guy refuses medical treatment until he knows exactly who shot the arrow, what caste the archer was, and what specific wood the arrow was carved from, well, he's going to die, right? Buddha viewed all this metaphysical speculation as a fatal distraction from the immediate ethical goal of vimutti, which is total freedom from suffering.
Okay, Section 2, the mechanics of suffering and the 12 links.
So having established that suffering is the immediate emergency, we arrive at the cause. This is the bhuva chakra, the wheel of becoming. Now listen up, because examiners absolutely love to test your memory on these 12 links. Here's a brilliant exam trick for you. Categorize them strictly into past, present, and future. Just remember that ignorance, or avidya, and impressions, samskaras, are strictly baggage left over from your past life. Meanwhile, first, meaning craving, and clinging are what dictate your present life, and those inevitably trigger the future life, which is characterized by rebirth and old age.
But how do we escape this mechanical cycle? We use the eightfold path. Now, do not just memorize a list of 8 things. For the UGC NET, you've got to understand these 3 core academic pillars: sila, samadhi, and prajna. Why is this important? Because they represent the absolutely inseparable cultivation of both morality and knowledge. Think about it. You literally cannot achieve prajna, which is perfect wisdom, without first building the absolute rock-solid foundation of sila, which is perfect ethical conduct.
Which brings us to Section 3, deep philosophical implications.
Now, even though Buddha famously avoided metaphysics, his ethical stances actually created a massive philosophical ripple effect. The absolute core engine of all this thought is pratidya samutpada, that's dependent origination. The rule is simple. On getting the cause, the effect arises. This doctrine establishes the critical middle path. It brilliantly, completely avoids the extreme of eternalism, which is the idea that things exist forever, entirely independently. And on the flip side, it avoids pure nihilism, the idea that things just pop in and out of existence randomly. Everything, literally everything, is strictly conditional.
Let's build that into Kasanikavada, or the doctrine of universal change. A highly probable MCQ concept to watch out for here is the criterion of existence, Artha Kriyakardva. Break that complex word down. It means the very definition of existing is simply the capacity to produce an effect. Take a seed in a jar. It doesn't produce a sprout, but put that same seed in the soil, and it does. Since the effect changes moment by moment, the object itself must be changing moment by moment. Therefore, everything exists for only one single, partless moment.
Now, apply that radical momentariness to us, to humans, and you get anattavada, the illusion of the soul. What we mistakenly label as a permanent soul is actually just a conventional, convenient name for a continuous stream of 5 changing elements, called skandhas. It's so much like how the word chariot simply points to a collection of wheels, axles, and shafts. There is no hidden chariotness lurking behind the parts, right? And in the exact same way, there is no eternal soul hiding behind these 5 changing skandhas.
Let's move on to Section 4, the 4 philosophical schools.
So, following Buddha's passing, his deliberate silence on transcendental reality led to some really severe academic schisms, ultimately resulting in 4 distinct schools. The primary divide among these schools boils down to 2 massive questions. First, the metaphysical question. Is reality mental or is it non-mental? Second, the epistemological question. If the external world does exist, is it known through direct perception or do we merely infer it?
Let's look first at the metaphysical divide between the two Mahayana schools. Quick exam tip here. Do not mix these two up. Madhyamika, which was founded by Nagarjuna, declares both the mind and the external world as sunya. And remember, sunya absolutely doesn't mean zero or nothingness. It means indescribable or lacking an independent essence. Yogacara, on the other hand, strictly defends the reality of the mind or vijnana. A great memory trick? Yogacara involves yoga, which happens in the mind. It's a form of subjective idealism, where external objects are just mere ideas.
Next up, the epistemological divide within the realism camp. Now, both of these agree that the external world exists, but they argue over how we actually know it. Lock this in for your exam. Santratikas rely on the inference of external objects. That's Baha-Yanumiyavada. They argue that the object leaves a representation on your mind, and then you infer the object from that imprint. Vaivasikas, however, demand direct perception, Bahya-Pratyaksavada. They logically point out, hey, you literally cannot infer something if you haven't directly perceived it at least once in the first place.
All right, final section, the religious divide and our interactive quiz.
To truly conclude our conceptual mastery today, we have to address how this intricate philosophy practically evolved into a religion. Notice the fundamental shift here. We move from the solitary, orthodox, self-reliant pursuit of the Arhat in Hinayana, where Buddha is seen just as a historical, ethical teacher, to the universal, incredibly compassionate mission of the Bodhisattva in Mahayana. Here, Buddha is actually elevated to a transcendental reality, and the ultimate goal becomes the liberation of all sentient beings. This is a perfect, quick revision sheet for you.
Okay, now let's test your conceptual clarity with a high-level exam question based on the specific epistemological stances we literally just covered. Think back to the difference between direct perception and inference. Which of those schools relies on inference? Take a second.
Boom. Excellent. If you chose Satrankantaka, you correctly remembered Bayanumeyawada. Think about the logic. Because everything exists for only a single partless moment, by the time your consciousness actually registers an object, the original object is already gone. You only have its mental representation left behind. Therefore, its existence can only be inferred, never directly perceived.
Let's tackle one more, a classic assertion-reason format. This requires you to conceptually bridge anatavada, the idea of no soul, with pratityasamutpada, dependent origination. The trap here is thinking you absolutely need a soul to be reborn. So, does the absence of a soul contradict the concept of rebirth? What do you think?
This one is absolutely vital for your exam. Both statements are true, and R perfectly explains A. The absence of a permanent soul does not contradict rebirth at all. Why? Because it is the predispositions, the samskaras from the past life, that causally initiate the new embryo. It's an unbroken stream of cause and effect. It is not a permanent entity packing its bags and moving into a new body. It is exactly like using one candle flame to light a second candle. The flames are undeniably different, but they are causally connected.
You guys have done fantastic work mapping out these incredibly profound concepts today. But before we go, I want to leave you with this final, intensely provocative thought to ponder. If there is genuinely no self, and we're just 5 constantly changing skandhas, then who exactly experiences nirvana? It's a massive conceptual puzzle. In fact, it's the very puzzle that eventually led the great philosopher Nagarjuna to conclude that, from the ultimate standpoint, perhaps samsara and nirvana aren't actually so different after all. Keep asking these deep questions, keep reviewing these concepts, and I will see you in the next Masterclass Explainer.